The chamber was a cathedral of judgment, walls carved from obsidian that shimmered with alien sigils, and silence fell heavier than stone as billions watched through crystalline screens suspended above. Shackled to the floor, Daniel Hayes said, "Your verdict weighs not only on me, but upon the very soul of my people." Judge Exilon said, "Humanity is reckless, violent, and undeserving of existence." His voice struck like steel dragged across glass. Daniel felt his chest tighten, the air sharp, the weight of eyes pressing like chains more cruel than iron. Collaborator Marcus said, "Your words are ash, Daniel, for you speak of a species drowning in its sins." Shadows trembled along the edges of the tribunal, and the silent crowd did not stir. The galaxy's history flickered in holograms above, a tapestry woven from humanity's wars, each battle twisted into accusation. Daniel's lips cracked dryly as he whispered, "They will not only judge me, they judge every memory carved in flesh and fire." And then a faint voice, softer than breath, came from the far shadows where no faces could be seen, whispering through silence, "They are not just judging you, they are judging us all." The weight of the judgment pressed deeper as Daniel Hayes said, "You condemn a world you never sought to understand." Judge Exilon said, "Your world has already revealed itself through rivers of blood." The crystalline walls pulsed faintly with echoes of past horrors. But Collaborator Marcus said, "You beg for sympathy, Daniel, but sympathy is wasted on a savage breed." Daniel's throat burned as he tried to hold the silence steady, yet his chest rose with defiance. The chamber's silence was broken only by distant hums of alien machinery, like a dirge beneath the sentence. Silent Ally Lira lowered her gaze, sorrow threading through her features, unseen by others. The tribunal chamber itself seemed alive, breathing with cold disdain, amplifying the chains that bound Daniel's wrists. The judgment was more than a sentence. It was the erasure of history, culture, and voice. Daniel said, "If you erase us, you erase yourselves, for our reflection burns inside your fear." The chamber walls echoed with shifting holograms as histories of human wars unfolded like wounds torn open again. Judge Exilon said, "Every act proves your nature." The words resonated like thunder. Collaborator Marcus said, "We survived by aligning with wisdom, not madness." Daniel Hayes forced himself upright against the pull of chains, his eyes burning with restrained fury. He said, "You show only the scars, never the hands that healed them." Silent Ally Lira shifted subtly, her expression taut with unspoken conflict. Above them, holograms swirled with battlefields, but also faintly glimpsed moments of mercy hidden between distortions. The tribunal pressed closer with silence, feeding upon the spectacle, while Daniel struggled to remind the galaxy of a humanity that still breathed hope within the shadows. Daniel Hayes felt his ribs ache with each breath, yet his voice rose, cutting through the tribunal's suffocating silence. He said, "You fear not our crimes but our endurance." Judge Exilon tilted his head, crystalline skin refracting light in a cascade of colors. He said, "Endurance is no virtue when it births chaos." Collaborator Marcus said, "The galaxy deserves order, Daniel, not human fire." Silent Ally Lira drew a slow breath, her eyes heavy with recognition of truths buried beneath cruelty. The chamber screens glowed brighter, showing children crying in ruined cities. Daniel's heart thundered, yet his gaze did not falter. He carried the voices of billions in silence, heavier than galaxies. The sentence echoed with finality, carved not in words but in the silence that followed. Judge Exilon said, "Humanity shall be erased." His voice rang like a bell of doom. Daniel Hayes bent his head briefly, then lifted it with fire. He said, "Erase us, and you erase the courage that lit your own survival." Collaborator Marcus said, "Enough, Daniel, your defiance is meaningless." Silent Ally Lira lowered her gaze, a faint shimmer of empathy crossing her eyes. The chamber darkened as crystalline walls absorbed the words, amplifying them as if etched into eternity. Daniel's whisper cut through like a blade, "Even traitors cannot erase what we are." The chamber fell utterly still, and billions watching felt the tremor of a truth that would not die. Darkness filled the cold prison cell, carved into the same obsidian that had framed the tribunal, every surface humming faintly with alien energy. Daniel Hayes whispered to the emptiness, "You condemn me, yet you do not know me." Memories surged like broken waves. The voice of Mother Laura echoed from the past, "Stand tall, Daniel, even when the world breaks." His fists clenched against chains. Father John's image appeared in his mind, his smile fading into silence as war consumed his life. Daniel pressed his forehead to the stone floor, whispering, "You were taken, and I am all that remains." Shadows swirled around him as he remembered Brother Clark falling in battle, and the betrayal that had marked his soul. His voice grew steadier. "They strip me of dignity, but they cannot strip me of being human." The silence mocked him, yet his heart carried the echo of those he had lost, shaping his defiance into something the tribunal had not foreseen. Daniel Hayes stared into the flickering shadows, as if they were carved from his own pain. He remembered Brother Clark shouting through smoke, "Do not surrender, even when surrounded." That voice, long silenced, filled the chamber of his mind. He said softly, "They call me broken, but every scar is a testament of survival." The tribunal's silence from earlier lingered like an aftertaste, yet inside him voices from the past argued against despair. Mother Laura's voice said, "Your spirit is the only inheritance left for the world." Daniel clenched his fists harder, blood tracing his knuckles, refusing to let despair rot him. The faint hum of alien machines wrapped around him like a predator, but he whispered louder, "I am one voice carrying billions." The chamber may have judged him, but his soul carried a weight greater than any verdict. The cell's silence was suffocating, but Daniel Hayes clung to memories that gave meaning. He remembered Father John's hand resting firmly on his shoulder once, his voice steady. "Strength is not found in fury, but in endurance." Daniel whispered, "You judged humanity for fury, but not for endurance." The faint echoes of the tribunal seemed to grow louder, Judge Island's words replaying like knives, "Your kind breeds chaos." Daniel pressed his palms against his chains and breathed through pain. His heart pulsed with the fire of those he had loved and lost. He murmured, "I was chosen because I was broken, but broken pieces still cut." The chamber's faint hum vibrated, as if testing his resolve. In that suffocating stillness, Daniel realized his scars were not marks of shame, but a language of survival the galaxy had yet to understand. Daniel Hayes lifted his gaze to the ceiling, breathing raggedly, as the weight of his memories shifted into strength. He said, "You think me weak, but weakness is the soil of defiance." He remembered Brother Clark falling to betrayal, his blood staining the ground, his last words, "Stand, even when the ground is gone." Daniel pressed against his chains, muscles straining, his eyes aflame. Mother Laura's gentle memory whispered, "Your scars are not endings, but beginnings." Silent Ally Lira's sorrowful eyes surfaced faintly in his memory, a stranger yet kin, reminding him that compassion existed even in alien silence. Daniel's voice cracked but grew stronger. "I am the trial you thought would crush us, but you will learn what cannot be crushed." His body was frail, but his spirit rose taller than the walls around him. The tribunal had condemned humanity, but Daniel Hayes sat in his cell, carrying a storm no walls could contain. He whispered, "You say we are savage, yet savagery is not all we are." His mind replayed Father John's steady voice, Brother Clark's final cry, Mother Laura's eternal strength. Their voices became armor upon him. He felt the breath of billions watching him beyond the chamber, their fates tied to his defiance. Daniel pressed his fists into the floor and said, "They will not remember me, but they will remember us." The silence of the cell stretched fast, yet the chains rattled like drums of resistance. Somewhere beyond walls and shadows, silent Ally Lira's whisper reached again, faint but unyielding, "They are not just judging you, they are judging us all." His heart burned. The storm inside him became his answer to extinction. The tribunal chamber brightened with cruel clarity as holographic screens ignited, replaying Earth's wars in grotesque detail, every atrocity painted as deliberate. Judge Ixylan said, "Your crimes are endless, Daniel Hayes. Your species a plague." Daniel Hayes lifted his head, voice hoarse but steady. "You show fire without the hands that built homes, and grief without the arms that comforted." Collaborator Marcus stood proud beside the alien judges, his smirk slicing through the silence as he said, "We have chosen survival through obedience, not defiance." Alien guards shifted uneasily as the chamber filled with distorted images of burning cities, soldiers, and starving children. Daniel Hayes' chest ached, his voice breaking as he whispered, "This is not justice. This is spectacle." Silent Ally. Lyra's eyes softened with hidden sorrow, her silence carrying weight. The chamber's silence was heavy, fractured only by the bitter hiss of fabricated histories. Judge Ixylan's crystalline voice cracked like thunder. "Even your allies turn against you, Daniel Hayes." Collaborator Marcus nodded with cruel satisfaction, saying, "Humanity's weakness is its refusal to obey order." Daniel Hayes' breath grew sharp, his voice trembling yet fierce. "You mistake defiance for weakness and obedience for survival." Screens above replayed soldiers betraying comrades, history twisted into poison. Alien guards shifted their stance, echoing the court's disdain. Silent Ally. Lyra closed her eyes briefly, her quiet grief unseen by most. The tribunal chamber became a theater of cruelty, amplifying every scar humanity carried. Daniel Hayes pressed against his chains and whispered to himself, "Truth is buried beneath their lies, but I will not let them silence it." His words vanished into the cold vastness, yet something stirred in the unseen millions who watched. The chamber erupted with new illusions, planets burning, children crying, soldiers drowning in endless fire. Judge Ixylan declared, "This is your legacy, Daniel Hayes, extinction earned by cruelty." Collaborator Marcus gestured proudly at the visions, his voice sharp, "These truths condemn us all, and still you beg for dignity." Daniel Hayes' shoulders trembled, but he forced himself upright, whispering, "These are lies stitched from truth, twisted to erase what you fear." Silent Ally Lyra shifted in her place, her luminous eyes watching Daniel Hayes with quiet intensity, her silence louder than the chamber's accusations. The air grew heavier, pressing upon his lungs like stone, as alien spectators leaned closer in their seats of judgment. Daniel Hayes' breath was shallow, but his spirit rose higher, carrying words that refused to die. "I will not let them bury humanity beneath shadows." The holograms swirled, now showing distorted visions of betrayals Daniel Hayes knew were lies. Soldiers turned against brothers, fathers abandoning children, all painted as humanity's truth. Judge Ixylan's voice cracked sharp, "Your kind consumes itself in blood and deceit." Collaborator Marcus sneered, "Order can only be restored without your chaos." Daniel Hayes closed his eyes, pain searing his chest, but whispered, "You call us chaos, but chaos is only the soil where hope survives." Silent Ally Lyra's expression softened, her sorrow burning brighter, her silence a quiet rebellion. Alien spectators murmured, their unrest rippling faintly. Daniel Hayes' heart thundered as he said, "You do not fear our sins, you fear our survival." The chamber darkened as if recoiling from the truth in his words, silence bending to the fire within him. The tribunal chamber quaked with silence heavier than storms. Judge Ixylan rose, his towering form glittering with crystalline authority as he said, "Your words are nothing, Daniel Hayes. Your fate already sealed." Collaborator Marcus leaned forward smirking. "Defiance is meaningless when death is inevitable." Daniel Hayes' body shook, yet his gaze burned brighter than the chamber's light as he whispered, "You can chain my body, but you will never chain the truth." Silent Ally. Lyra's eyes glistened, her sorrow turning to quiet strength, a flicker of rebellion hidden in stillness. The chamber's projections flared with war again, but Daniel Hayes' words cut through them like a blade, echoing into the silence of billions watching. His chest rose with fire, his voice trembling but unwavering. "You fear us because we survive. That is our crime, and that is our gift." The tribunal chamber shifted, its walls peeling back into a colossal arena, drenched in blinding white light. Judge Silence said, "Words cannot prove endurance, only trials reveal truth." Chains fell from Daniel Hayes' wrists, only to be replaced with cruel restraints that cut deeper. Collaborator Marcus smirked and said, "Now we will see if your body breaks faster than your words." Alien gods shoved Daniel Hayes forward, the floor alive with blades of light, ready to wound. Silent Ally Lira lowered her head, her voice soft, though nearly inaudible. "Endure, for they fear what cannot be broken." Daniel Hayes gasped as the restraints pierced his skin, blood streaking the obsidian tiles beneath his feet. He whispered, "If survival is their measure, then survival will be my weapon." Billions leaned closer across the galaxy, their silence more terrifying than thunder. The trial began with torment disguised as judgment. Daniel Hayes stumbled as spikes of energy erupted from the floor, scorching the ground near his feet. Judge Silence said survival through pain is proof of resilience or proof of futility. Collaborator Marcus leaned forward and said, "He will crawl before long and the galaxy will see his weakness." Daniel Hayes clenched his jaw, forcing his legs to hold as he whispered, "Pain is not defeat, it is memory turned into strength." Silent Ally Lyra's gaze lifted briefly, sorrow etched with quiet fire. Alien spectators watched, some in disdain, others with unease. Daniel Hayes staggered forward, chains rattling, each step a silent refusal to collapse. The chamber's silence pressed upon him, every breath a battle against agony. Daniel Hayes collapsed to his knees as the energy floor flared again, searing his skin with arcs of light. He groaned, his voice breaking, "You cannot break what has already been broken." Judge Island leaned forward, crystalline features shimmering with disdain. "Endurance without purpose is vanity." Collaborator Marcus said, "The galaxy watches a man reduced to ash, nothing more." Daniel Hayes gritted his teeth, raising his face defiantly, whispering, "Ash feeds the fire that follows." Silent Ally Lyra's lips parted slightly as if to speak, then closed, her sorrow swallowing her words. The audience rippled with restless unease, the silence fractured by the weight of Daniel Hayes' suffering. His chest heaved as blood dripped to the floor, yet his spirit refused collapse. The next ordeal began, chains yanking Daniel Hayes upward, suspending him before the watching galaxy. Judge Silence said, "Your frailty proves our judgment." Collaborator Marcus sneered, "He will beg before long, and his cries will echo as humanity's epitaph." Daniel Hayes' arms trembled, muscles tearing under the strain, but his voice cracked through pain. "You call this frailty, I call this defiance." Silent Ally Lyra's sorrowful eyes burned brighter, reflecting hidden compassion. The audience projections leaned closer, billions of alien eyes feeding upon the sight of one human suffering. Daniel Hayes screamed but refused to yield, every cry carrying the weight of a species chained to his body. His words cut through agony, "If this is survival, then you have already lost, for you fear it most." Daniel Hayes hung broken, his body trembling with blood streaking his arms, yet his spirit rose louder than his screams. Judge Silence said, "You endure, but endurance does not redeem." Collaborator Marcus leaned close, his voice cruel. "This is not justice, Daniel. This is fear revealed." His smile was sharp, and his betrayal struck deeper than the chains. Daniel Hayes' breath burned, his whisper sharp with fire. "You smile coldly, Marcus, but even traitors cannot erase what we are." Silent Ally Lyra's eyes glistened with unspoken rebellion, her gaze fixed on him. Billions watched as Daniel Hayes' words rippled across galaxies, striking deeper than any wound. His endurance had become the weapon they feared most. Truth carried not in victory, but in survival. The tribunal chamber trembled as Daniel Hayes stood bloodied but unbowed, his chains dragging like broken thunder. Judge Silence said, "You rise only to fall harder, human." Daniel Hayes' chest heaved, his voice sharp with fire. "I do not rise for myself, I rise for every voice silenced before me." Collaborator Marcus smirked, his tone venomous. You clothe weakness in poetry, but no words will save you. Silent Ally Lira's sorrowful eyes glimmered faintly, her silence carrying defiance stronger than steel. Alien spectators leaned closer, the murmurs of billions like waves crashing unseen. Daniel Hayes shouted, "Mothers bury sons, fathers shield daughters, and still we endure." The chamber grew restless, the galaxy no longer unmoved. Judge Exilin raised a crystalline hand, silencing the chamber with thunderous stillness. "Your tales of sacrifice are dust against truth." Daniel Hayes' voice cracked yet grew stronger. "Sacrifice is the truth, the only truth that survives." Collaborator Marcus sneered, "You twist tragedy into pride." Silent Ally Lyra's hands tightened within her robes, her luminous eyes unblinking. Daniel Hayes shouted with broken breath, "We endured ruin not because we were strong, but because we refused to surrender to despair." Billions listening stirred uneasily, their silence fractured by the tremor of recognition. The chamber, once stone, now quivered like flesh pierced by fire. The chamber walls erupted with holograms of fire, showing humanity's wars like a scarred mosaic. Judge Exilin declared, "This is your legacy, Daniel Hayes." Daniel Hayes staggered but raised his voice. "You show scars without healing, fire without rebirth." Collaborator Marcus clapped mockingly, saying, "The galaxy does not want rebirth, it wants order." Daniel Hayes shouted louder, "Order without love is a cage, and humanity does not belong in cages." Silent Ally Lyra's sorrow flickered into quiet admiration, her luminous gaze reflecting hope. Billions stirred across alien worlds, voices rising faintly. Daniel Hayes' words became fire in silence, impossible to erase. Judge Exilin thundered, "You mistake defiance for victory, Daniel Hayes, but your kind remains guilty." Daniel Hayes gasped, body trembling, yet said, "I do not beg for mercy, I demand recognition." Collaborator Marcus snapped, "Recognition for monsters is madness." Silent Ally Lyra raised her gaze higher, her voice soft but piercing. "Sometimes monsters are born from wounds inflicted by the powerful." The chamber fell into silence, shock rippling across billions. Daniel Hayes whispered, "Even if you chain me, even if you kill me, you cannot erase us." His words rang deeper than steel, carried into every alien ear. The climax burned with fire beyond chains. Judge Exilin roared, "The verdict remains extermination." Daniel Hayes bled but stood, shouting, "You cannot erase us, for we live in memory, in fire, in defiance." Collaborator Marcus hissed, "You are nothing but a dying ember." Silent Ally Lyra's eyes filled with tears, her sorrow transformed into courage, as she whispered, "An ember can ignite galaxies." Daniel Hayes looked skyward, his voice breaking but unbroken. "We are not asking for mercy, we demand to be seen." Billions erupted in cries, some of hate, many of recognition, the chamber torn by the storm of humanity's endurance. The tribunal chamber quaked as Judge Exilin pronounced, "The sentence is extermination." Chains yanked Daniel Hayes forward, blood streaking the obsidian floor. Daniel Hayes shouted, "You fear not our crimes but our survival." Collaborator Marcus laughed bitterly, "Your survival ends here." Silent Ally Lyra's sorrowful eyes blazed as she whispered, "The truth cannot be silenced." Billions erupted in chaos, alien factions divided, some demanding death, others shouting for justice. The chamber shook as voices rose, the conspiracy unraveling in plain sight. Daniel Hayes whispered, "You will not bury us, for we are already inside you." Judge Exilin raised his crystalline arm to silence chaos, his voice like shattering glass. "Enough, the verdict stands." Daniel Hayes lifted his head, whispering, "You cannot erase what already lives in memory." Collaborator Marcus snapped, "Memory dies with the body." Silent Ally Lyra said softly, "Memory becomes truth when spoken aloud." The audience rippled, billions of voices clashing louder than the tribunal. Daniel Hayes shouted, "We are your fear, and your fear proves we endure." The chamber cracked with uproar, the conspiracy exposed as threads unraveled into the open. Alien factions within the audience screens clashed violently, some demanding humanity's death, others crying for justice. Judge Exilin thundered, "Order must not fall to chaos." Daniel Hayes whispered, "Your order is built upon fear." Collaborator Marcus sneered, "Chaos will consume you." Silent Ally Lira raised her gaze higher, her voice breaking the silence. "You fear humanity because it mirrors your own survival." Billions gasped as the truth cut deeper than any weapon. Daniel Hayes groaned in pain but shouted, "Even traitors cannot erase what we are." The chamber fractured under the weight of his defiance. Judge Xylan pounded the tribunal floor, his crystalline form shattering sparks. "Order will prevail." Daniel Hayes stood trembling, his voice sharp as fire. "Order cannot erase the truth of survival." Collaborator Marcus hissed, "Truth dies with the body." Silent Ally Lira said softly, but fiercely, "Truth lives when sacrifice breathes." The chamber gasped as an alien guard faltered, lowering his weapon. Daniel Hayes whispered, "You cannot bury us, for we are already your shadow." The chaos became unstoppable, factions splitting, voices rising, the trial collapsing into history's fracture. The tribunal dissolved into chaos as billions cried out, the conspiracy laid bare. Judge Xylan roared, "This trial is ended." Collaborator Marcus hissed, "This galaxy will not remember you with honor." Daniel Hayes bled, his voice trembling yet sharp, "You cannot erase us, you cannot bury us, for we already burn within your fear." Silent Ally Lira sorrowful gaze met his, her whisper carrying across the storm, "You have given them a warning." The chamber fell into stunned silence as Daniel Hayes' final defiance echoed, louder than the sentence of extermination. The chamber lay fractured, silence drowning the storm that had raged moments before. Judge Xalin said, "The tribunal spares humanity, but not without scar." His crystalline voice trembled like broken ice. Daniel Hayes bled upon the obsidian floor, whispering, "We endure not through mercy, but through defiance." Collaborator Marcus spat bitterly, "Survival under watch is no freedom at all." Silent Ally Lyra's sorrowful voice carried softly, "Survival is the seed of freedom, planted in silence but destined to grow." Billions across galaxies stared, stunned, as history cracked into a new shape. Daniel Hayes lifted his head, eyes burning with fire that chains could not dim. He whispered, "You wanted an ending, but you have written only a warning." The arena dissolved back into the tribunal hall, walls closing with a groan like collapsing stone. Judge Xylan said, "Humanity shall live under constant watch, marked for its defiance." Daniel Hayes' body trembled, yet his voice rose, better marked than erased. Collaborator Marcus sneered, "You mistake survival for victory." Silent Ally Lyra whispered, "Victory is not survival. It is the refusal to vanish." Alien factions screamed across galaxies, but none silenced Daniel Hayes' fire. His breath shallow, his chest burned with unbroken defiance as he declared, "This scar is proof that we remain." The tribunal trembled under words that refused to die. Alien guards released Daniel Hayes, his body collapsing but his spirit rising higher than the chamber itself. Judge Xylan whispered coldly, "Your warning echoes, but your fate is shackled." Collaborator Marcus growled, "History will forget your defiance." Daniel Hayes' bloodied lips cracked with a faint smile. "History does not forget fire, it only waits for it to burn again." Silent Ally Lyra's luminous eyes followed him with sorrowful compassion, whispering, "The fire has already begun." The chamber dimmed, but the silence it carried felt less like an ending and more like the birth of prophecy. Daniel Hayes was led from the tribunal chamber, each step heavy, each breath fire against silence. Judge Xylan's voice followed, "Remember, you live only because mercy allows it." Daniel Hayes whispered, "Mercy did not keep me alive, defiance did." Collaborator Marcus shouted bitterly, "You will crawl in chains until your fire dies." Silent Ally Lira lowered her gaze, her whisper floating like wind, "Chains cannot kill fire." The galaxy remained transfixed, stunned by the survival carved into one man's wounds. Daniel Hayes bore scars not as defeat, but as banners of endurance none could erase. The tribunal's doors closed with thunder, sealing judgment into history. Daniel Hayes walked into the darkness beyond, scarred but unbroken. Billions across galaxies whispered his words, not as surrender, but as warning. Judge Xylan sat rigid in crystalline silence, his expression haunted by defiance he could not erase. Collaborator Marcus trembled with rage, realizing betrayal of his own kind had gained nothing. Silent Ally Lira's sorrowful eyes glowed faintly, whispering to herself, they wanted a verdict, but they were given a warning. Daniel Hayes' steps echoed into eternity, his scars becoming prophecy. Humanity lived, scarred but unyielding, the galaxy forever changed by survival.